I'm so hungry. Feed me tacos. I can't believe I became homeless. I'm a doctor. How could this have happened? If you want to find out, stay tuned for this story time with yours truly. Hi and welcome back to this channel. My name is Dr. Lindsay Marie. I'm a Christian comedian missionary doctor sharing a message of hope, health, and wellness for the mind, body, and soul. If you don't want to miss any future videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button and don't forget to stay till the end of the video for a word of encouragement. If you haven't noticed, I'm not in my typical home office setting, and you might be thinking, oh my gosh, is she really homeless? She's got a beggar shirt on. Don't worry, I'm not currently homeless, but this is the story of a time when I was homeless as a doctor. And I thought I would change it up a bit and take you guys on a walk with me as I tell you my story. I hope that you can come join me to get some exercise for the day that will keep your bodies healthy and moving. I've got my new Nikes on, my sun protector, so get yours and let's go. So I'm just going to be walking around this park. It is about 90 degrees out, so if you see me glistening, that's just glitter, not sweat. All right, so my story starts in the year 2015. Yes, it was 5 years ago. I was a third-year family medicine resident at the time, about ready to graduate in 2 months. That means I was under the stress of having to study for my final ever boards exam to become a board-certified family medicine doctor. It's also a time where you have to begin your job search and figure out where you want to work as an attending physician after you graduate. It's a time where you're having to review job contracts and you have to get a lawyer to review those contracts with you. So it's a very stressful time. So I was coming home from work late one night. It was about 9:30 in the evening after a 14-hour day. I enter through my garage into my kitchen and I find that it is like a sauna in my house. And I'm thinking, what is going on? Well, maybe it's just the air conditioning that broke or something, so no big deal. I walk around the house, and as soon as I get to the back wall of the kitchen, I start to notice some white fuzzies, and they are not cute white fuzzies, mind you. Then I see gray fuzzies, black fuzzies all over the wall. Starting to freak out a bit. So I went to go check the rest of the house. And let me just tell you that I am a single girl with a cat at the time, living in a 3-bedroom house all to myself. Well, who am I kidding? I'm still a single girl with a cat. But as I get to one of the back bedrooms, it is the worst. There is white fuzzies all over my dresser, all over my bed, all over the floor, all over my clothes in the dresser. It's mold. Mold everywhere. So in a panic, I start to freak out and take all the clothes out. Then I find some chemicals or something to clean off the dresser and wipe it all down. It is not coming off so easily. I don't know how long it took me, but I believe about 3 hours had passed, and it's getting pretty late. It's like 1 in the morning at this time. I start to feel like I'm getting a headache and I'm starting to feel itchiness all over my skin. So I'm thinking to myself, this place is toxic. I can't stay here. So I call my mom at 1 in the morning, tell her what's going on, and figure out that, well, the only other place I could go to stay for the night is back at the hospital and stay in one of the resident call rooms. The only problem is I have a cat, my beloved cat Carly, which you guys met on my intro video if you watched that, but if you didn't, here she is. So Carly, because she couldn't stay at the hospital, would have to stay behind, unfortunately. And the only thing I can remember is feeling terrible about it. I just remember packing my bags, looking down at her one last time and saying, okay, bye Carly, I hope you survive the night. And I went off to the hospital for the night without her. Okay, so it started to get a bit hot. I'm gonna take advantage of this lovely bench right here. Feel free to join me for a break or a water break if you need to. Now, where were we? Oh yes, so I'm at the hospital the next morning and I told my advisor, who is my mentor assigned to me throughout my residency, what was going on with my house, and she was very understanding and empathetic with me, which was good. She said in her sweet voice, "Oh dear, that sounds terrible. Why don't I go ahead and cancel your clinic this morning so that you can take care of the house, and I can send my husband out there to meet you to see if you need any help." I'm thinking, perfect, that's exactly what I need. I don't want to deal with any extra stress of doing clinic this morning. So instead, I thought to myself, I need to find a new place to live. So I need to make some phone calls. Now, unfortunately, this was the first week in March, which just so happened to be Bike Week in Daytona Beach, Florida, where I lived. And if you know anything about Bike Week in Daytona, you know that it's a time where hundreds of thousands of bikers from all over the United States gather with their Harleys and crotch rockets and speed up and down the streets 24/7 for a week. That means they also take up all of the extra housing in the town, so any hotels, Airbnbs, or any other places to stay are completely booked out. So basically, when I'm calling around, I'm having to call around for a new apartment. So I finally found something available within my price range, but it wasn't gonna be open for another 2 weeks. So in the meantime, I decided I might need to get a storage garage too, so that I can move some of my furniture out into that before I can move into my apartment so that it doesn't get any worse. I finished up signing the apartment lease, got the keys to my storage garage, and was on my way home to meet my advisor's husband at my house. He just so happened to already be there when I got home, and when I got out of the car, as soon as I was on the driveway, I was met by a man who worked for the city, and he handed me a piece of paper and he said, "Did you know that you used 13,000 gallons of water this month?" 13,000 gallons of water? 13,000 gallons of water? What? Yes, 13,000 gallons of water. At this point, I decide, okay, it's time to call the landlord. He needs to know about this. Now, he lives out in California at the time, which is real convenient. But he's like, "Oh, don't worry. We'll get it all fixed up back into shape and you'll be right back in there." And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's bad. And he's like, "Well, I'm sure it'll be fixed right away." And I'm like, "No, I think you need to come out here." And he says, "Well, I'm dealing with a family emergency right now, so I can't be out there for at least another week." And I'm like, "Okay, but you need to get out here." And then he's like, "Let me make a bunch of phone calls and I'll get right back with you." So he gets back with me and he says, "Yeah, I'm gonna need you to meet the plumber tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Then at 2 p.m. I'm gonna have you meet the insurance agent. And then we're gonna have to get some drying agent guys out there to put some machines to suck up all the moisture. And lastly, we're gonna have some mold inspectors come out to the house." Excuse me, but I am an extremely busy doctor working 80 hours a week, and on top of that, trying to study for my family medicine board exam. I am not the landlord. I don't have time for this. But unfortunately, there was nobody else to go meet the plumber in the morning, so it had to be me, and I had to miss more of my residency. So I meet the plumber at 7:30 a.m. the next morning, and he has to go under the crawl space of the house, and what he finds is that there was a copper pipe with a pinhole-sized leak that led to the leakage of the 13,000 gallons of water over the month's time. And because it was one of the first hot days in March, it just led to an excess moisture buildup within the house, which led to the mold explosion. So then we had the drying agent guys come out with these refrigerator-sized industrial dehumidifiers to help remove some of that excess moisture in the house. And there were about 4 of them taking over my entire kitchen. Meanwhile, I'm having to move and clean and pack the house up to help move more things into my storage garage. It was a very stressful time period. As I said, I was working up to 70 to 80 hours a week on top of studying for my boards. So my schedule for the next 2 weeks looked like this. I would go to work at 7:30 in the morning, have a 10 to 14 hour day at work, then come back to the moldy house, pack up and try to move things to the storage garage from about 9 at night till midnight. Then from midnight to about 3 in the morning, I would try to study for my board exam, get 2 hours of sleep, wake up and do it all over again. And I did this for that whole 2-week period, which became exhausting. When the drying agent guys came, that was about midweek, and the landlord told me the mold inspectors would be there on a Friday. But he said if it rains, they can't come and do it, and they're gonna have to push it to the next Monday. Well, lo and behold, Friday comes around, and of course it's raining, so I had to wait until Monday for the mold inspectors to come. They finally came, did all of their samplings around the house, and they said they had to send it to a lab in South Carolina, and it would be a few more days before they got the results back. This whole time I'm getting more and more exposure to this mold by cleaning and packing up my house. The only thing I can think of to do is to wear my N95 mask from the hospital, which I didn't even know if it was gonna work. And I remember freaking out and thinking, what if I get fungus ball in my lung? It's something we learned about in medical school, and I could just see that picture now. Me with fungus ball in the lung. Even my co-residents were like, yeah, if I was you, I would be worried. Maybe you should get a lawyer. And I'm thinking, I know, but I already have to get a contract lawyer to review my contracts for work coming up. So much stress. The life of being a doctor. Anyways, so the lab results finally come back and the news is in. I'm praying anything but black mold, anything but black mold. Thank God it wasn't black mold. But it was a more common household mold called Aspergillus. The only problem was they told me the toxicity of it depends on the spore count. And the spore count came back over 10,000, which is pretty bad. And they said, yes, it is too toxic to live here. So what did they do? They had to board the whole place up and they put do not enter signs that said, warning, microbial hazard. Can you believe it? But what makes the whole thing worse is that they told me, yeah, with a spore count of over 10,000, you're gonna have to get rid of all your belongings or wipe it down with this expensive liquid antimicrobial wipe, and even then, you could still carry mold spores wherever you go. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. I can't believe this is happening right now. I already moved half of my stuff to the storage garage. Great. So there was that, and as I said, I didn't have any extra time to be wiping down all of my belongings to salvage them, so I ended up having to lose almost everything and decided to only clean off just a few things that I really needed. But I still had to go back to the storage garage and remove and clean out that whole area. And I'm the type of person that just didn't want to bother or inconvenience anyone with all of that, so I really didn't have anyone to help me. I knew how toxic it was, and I just didn't want to have to expose anyone else to harm their health. And that's not the end of it, it gets worse. So you might be wondering, well, what happened to my cat? Well, luckily my advisor offered to help watch her for the next 3 weeks to a month, or however long it would take, until I got more settled into my new apartment. Meanwhile, I was still staying back at the hospital in the resident lounge. There is a total of 3 beds. 2 residents are on call each night, and the 3rd bed is left over for anyone who has to come in and do a delivery, which isn't very often, but it just so happened to be this week where someone had to come in. So the next day I find out about it, and my chief resident comes up to me and he's like, Lindsay, you can no longer stay in the call room. What do you mean I can't stay in the call room? I'm homeless. Well, Matt came in for his continuity delivery last night and he didn't have a bed to sleep in. Oh yeah? He doesn't have a bed for 1 night? Well, I don't have a bed for 2 weeks. It doesn't matter, you're gonna have to find a new place to stay. Besides, the attendings won't approve of it anyway. What do you mean the attendings won't approve of it? They know about it, they would approve. I have the final say around here.
What I say goes.
I can't believe it. My chief resident had no mercy, no empathy on me during a time of my homelessness, so I had to find somewhere else to stay. Luckily, one of my co-residents by the name of Mike, who was super sweet, let me stay at his house for the next week. The only problem was he lived on the complete opposite side of town as my moldy house. In a normal day's traffic, it would take about a half an hour's drive, but during bike week traffic, it would take anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half's drive between the 2 houses. There goes an extra 2 to 3 hours of my studying time, so much for that. Thanks a lot, chief resident, way to make me fail my boards. All right, one last location change at this little picnic table. I just felt like being hands-free for the rest of my story, and I'm not sure how the lighting is here, so maybe I'll take my hat off so it's better lighting. That feels better. So you guys are probably wondering how my story ends. Well, let me tell you, after my chief resident kicked me out and I lost all that extra studying time due to driving in bike week traffic, I was pretty much about at my breaking point. I remember being at my storage garage one night, suffocating with my N95 mask on, struggling with the heavy boxes. I had them on this cart and I couldn't even have the strength to open up the garage. I was struggling with the gate, and suddenly a giant box of my belongings fell off the cart onto the floor, and at that moment, I also lost it, fell down to the floor, and just started weeping. I'm talking like hysterical, ugly cry weeping. It was not a pretty sight. So I'm on the floor crying, and it is right then and there that I hear God speak to me in my spirit. And he's telling me about my issues of all of my belongings, that I have these hoarder tendencies. Why was I trying to save all my moldy stuff? And he's reminding me of my own issues of letting go of things that are no longer serving me. You see, just 2 weeks before my house got taken over by toxic mold, I had just turned 30 and just came out of a toxic relationship. Throughout medical school and my whole entire residency, I had been so focused on my studies that I had lost my closer relationship with God, and he was using this trial in my life to get my focus back on him and not on all of the things of this earth. So the word of encouragement that I wanted to give you guys today comes from the scripture Matthew 6:19-21, which states, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." My treasure was in my material things. And my focus was completely off of God at the time and on my life. And he was showing me that my whole life had become toxic, with toxic relationships, toxic belongings. Now my whole entire house was taken over by toxic mold. And it was at that moment that I realized my need for change and my need to draw back closer to God. Another one of my favorite scriptures comes from Colossians 3:2, which says, "Set your mind on things above and not on things of this earth." And looking back, I realized it was also a time where God was also preparing me to become a long-term missionary. Missionaries don't have anything. They don't have a house, they don't have a car, they only have their suitcase or what's on their back. God knows I wasn't going to get rid of all of my things, so he had to allow something to do it for me. But in the end, everything worked out for my good. As it says in the Bible, all things work together for our good. There was a really sweet nurse at my clinic who offered to bring me a bag of clothes and shoes because I didn't have very many at the time. I finally got into my new apartment, but I didn't have anything. I lost all of my furniture, all of my clothes basically. I even lost my grandma's antique dresser and my favorite cloth shoes from Urban Outfitters. Ugh, I still can't believe that. And I didn't have renter's insurance at the time. So that set me back a few grand while trying to buy all new things. The new bed that I ordered took another 2 weeks to deliver to my house. And when they finally brought it, they brought half of it only. They only brought the box frame instead of the mattress, so I had to wait even more. Whew. Yes, it was really a time in my life where I had to learn patience and perseverance. And I wasn't completely toxic free at that moment because unfortunately the apartment that I got had a person living underneath me who was a chain smoker, smoking vapor all day long, and it filtered up in through my house and continued to give me more headaches. So I went from mold to smoke. But despite all of that, I was finally reunited with Carly again. I finished out studying for my board exam, and as you can imagine, I did end up passing my final family medicine boards exam, as I am now a board certified family medicine physician. So that was my experience being homeless as a doctor. Fortunately for me, it was only 2 weeks. And although I didn't have my own home at the time, I never was without a shelter or place to stay at night. I did have the opportunity to stay at the hospital for the first week and then my friend Mike's house for the second week. But nevertheless, this experience has given me a greater appreciation for the things that I do have. And it's given me a new heart and compassion for those who are less fortunate, and it makes me want to reach out more to the homeless whenever I can. So I hope that my story of overcoming adversity has inspired someone today. I want to encourage anyone who is watching who may be going through a really hard time. Right now during this pandemic, things are really rough for a lot of people. Thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have lost their jobs. They may be struggling to pay rent. But if that's the case for you, I want to encourage you, if you are down to nothing, look up, because that is when God is up to something. It may just be a time where He wants you to draw closer to Him and trust in Him for your needs. So that is a wrap for this story time today. Thank you for joining me and learning about my time of becoming homeless. In this video, we talked a lot about toxins and toxicities. I have a whole series out on detox, one video each for the mind, body, and the soul. I will put those videos in a playlist and link them at the end, so be sure to check them out. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Until next time, bye!